Football has for decades been seen as a male-dominated sport, and despite a rise in the popularity and success of the women's game, this growth has highlighted attitudes within the sport and their impact on female participation. I'll be diving into people's experiences and viewpoints in order to look at the attitudes both present in the game and in society.
My name is Charlotte. I've been playing football since I was about 6 years old. I'm 30 now, and I feel like it's been the one constant love of my life. I realise now, even at a very young age, girls had to be better than the average boy to be able to join in at football.
When I started competitively, I joined a boys' team because there weren't many girls' teams around at the time. And then I did join a girls' team with some of my friends, which was really fun, and it felt a lot more inclusive.
Do you feel as though your own attitude changed towards football when you were growing up?
Yeah, I definitely, when I hit sort of 15, 16, I was in college. There was loads of girls around me that weren't into sports. And I feel like to fit in to the sort of that kind of society, it wasn't popular to be sporty. When it would come to weekends and people were going out like shopping or hanging out with their friends, my priorities shifted a bit.
Research has shown is that girls join football clubs or activities for very different reasons to boys in their teenage years. And for girls, it's a lot more of a social thing, or they say it's a social thing, right? And it's like, I want to see my mates. I've only been playing football for 6 months, but I like that I get to see my friends at this time on this day. Whereas with boys, it's like, I want to be the next Gareth Bale. I want to be the next Ronaldo. Like they have these very ambitious sort of reasons that they tend to cite. And we do have girls that are really talented and say, I want to be a professional footballer. But the majority of girls are just like, I like football.
I took a break for a few years, and then one of my old teammates, who was a very good friend of mine, reached out and let me know she was playing for a ladies' team. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to try and get back into it again. Both teams that I played for when I was younger, when I was an adult, both teams have had a male coach, and I feel like when you're younger, I didn't particularly notice it that much, but I feel like as a woman, there's a different dynamic between the management and the players. Sometimes they have a lot of expectations for you, which you just can't meet, and that can really make you feel deflated.
A lot of women in football have the experience where if it's an entirely female-based environment, you can get a lot of intense social issues. Whereas if you kind of like have a spattering of men in there, it can really dilute it. But equally, if you had an all-male coaching team and an all-female squad, that presents its own issues, and there can be a lot of like, unintentional passive sexism that's passed on, calling people ladies, calling people girls, and just sort of the language that's used and things that aren't considered, or a bit of awkwardness around period pains or not talking about endometriosis and stuff. So I really think the way to combat it is not just to have an all-female environment, but to have educated male allies, a wider scale of the power of football and the ability to change lives. You can, same for girls, not just boys, you can be taking people away from kind of a life of like straying out of school and turning to sort of hanging around with the wrong crowd or taking drugs or whatever, into I have a goal that I'm going to aim for and I'm going to be brought into this system, and I've got my football practice I've got 2 or 3 times a week to keep me focused and have a shared passion with people.
I feel like if more was done to encourage girls to keep playing, it would have a massive impact. I play badminton, I like going kayaking, and like when I've done those things in an environment that I feel more comfortable in with my friends, and there's not all of these pressures being put on you, I feel so much better in myself. I feel happier, I feel like I've achieved something.
Women's engagement in the sport is something organisations are working on. On a national level, we have the FA, who have introduced specific programmes to address the problems, while smaller campaign groups are also setting up their very own projects.
I know one of the directors of the Her Game 2 campaign, and nearly a year ago, my partner and I got in touch with them and said we'd really want to run a girls and women's training centre. I think it would be really great for Her Game 2 to have these set up. And Her Game 2 is an anti-sexism campaign aimed at female fans. And we thought, why not take that experience for women and girls, not just from the stands, but try and add to it and enhance it and improve it on the pitch as well. We're on the first one, we say, because we want to set them up in multiple places across the UK. We have training sessions every week for girls who've never kicked a ball to women who play in quite high level locally, and just want extra training sessions. And I guess I kind of wanted to consolidate all of the things that I knew and had learned about the women's football space and put them there for everybody, so they didn't have to like find out over 3 or 4 years like I did. We have a discount with Ida Sports, who do women's specific football boots, like all specifically researched on female feet, because so many of the football boots you buy in shops, if not all of them, are done based on measuring men's feet and then just making them smaller sizes for women and girls. There's an app which we get people signed up on for free, which kind of gives people like really, really, really high standard technical drills that they can do at home as well, because girls and adult women, of course, but girls are not given, I think, socially the same routes to become a really good footballer just because of the way that they're socialized. You walk into a park and now you see it where girls might be playing with boys, but so often it's just boys, and kind of from a technical level they're really kind of going up like this. And so we wanted to kind of put all the tools there for girls and women as well. And we also make sure that there's like period products and deodorant and hair ties and stuff in the toilets, just that you don't get traditionally with football clubs. And then we also are just kind of like boosting a lot of content on social media and trying to get that engagement up, and highlighting like amazing goals, bits of skill, and just kind of trying to increase the visibility on social media. I know that it can be quite an echo chamber where maybe you see a lot of like the same things all the time, but if you're not already in that echo chamber, it can be quite difficult to find representation if you're a girl, or woman wanting to become a bit more aware and be involved in football.
With the exposure and awareness of the women's game improving, it's encouraging more people to get behind the sport than ever before.
Hi, I'm Tom, and I've been a football fan pretty much all of my life. And I'd definitely say that the growth of the female game has meant more people, like more females in my life, have become interested in football. For example, my sister, if you'd have spoken to her 10 years ago, she really wouldn't have wanted to talk about football. Whereas now she has a great interest in both the men's and females game, and I think this is mainly because football isn't now just seen as a male-dominated sport, and I think she felt more comfortable with being a fan of football because more females were involved. I would definitely say as well that men have become more passionate about the female game, especially over the last 10 or 15 years. Personally, I was really lucky to go watch England in the World Cup in Australia last year, and that was such an amazing experience, and I was so excited by it. But I think if it had been 10 or 15 years earlier, I don't think I would have even known that that was going on. So it's definitely true that it's grown a lot, I think, especially in this country. Football being more inclusive will be very beneficial for the sport itself. I think that women have a lot to do for the sport of football, and I think that it's really positive that we've got more female fans, like female referees, and just generally more female involvement. It's really important that the sport continues to grow and be more inclusive in the future, for the sport just to become better in general.
Despite social attitudes seemingly changing, online abuse is something that women involved in the sport are more commonly experiencing.
I'm Chloe Reynolds and I am a sports journalist. I write for websites like Bavel, Empowered, WSL 4Time.
Could you describe to me your experience with ex-footballer Joey Barton and receiving online abuse?
I was also abused online after he put a tweet out about International Women's Day saying that women should leave football alone. So I replied like some of my press passes that I've gained over the years, being like, oh no, we're not going to do that. Then I was just flooded with the most horrible abuse.
And how did reading those comments make you feel?
It just makes you feel a bit worthless and like, why am I doing this? Yeah, maybe I am only doing it to check the box. Why am I even bothering when this is the thing that women get on the daily just for sharing their passion, doing what they love? Like after it happened, I was going to be doing the British gymnastics coverage. I didn't really want to do that anymore. It was a big event as well because it was Olympic qualifying around that time, so I'm like, oh, this is going to be like amazing, watching potential Olympians, watching the most amazing gymnastics like right on my doorstep, and I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't think I can go because of what's happened. I felt like I didn't deserve it.
Joey Barton was recently charged over alleged malicious communications online. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's great to see. It's really good to see that it's happening and he has been charged and people are starting to take it seriously, because there's a time where you just be told to brush it off. Like, it's fine, it's a part of life. So it is good and it is a step and a change in the right direction for women or even just people who are receiving that type of abuse. Twitter aren't even just looking at it and flagging it, they're actually like taking the time and consideration to like go through it, which is such a step in the right direction of change that will benefit so many like young women and girls who want to go into the career and industry of sports journalism.
What would be your advice to women working in the sports industry if this was to happen to them?
I just say, like, don't let it stop you. Like, yeah, it happens and it will probably happen a lot more throughout the career. Make sure you've got a really good like support system as well around you. I felt like quite lucky that when it did happen to me, I had a good like group of mates around me who were there to support me and make sure that I wasn't alone. Just don't ever let it stop you doing what you love, because it's gonna happen, but there's more measures being taken place now to try and stop the misogynist and sexist abuse that women just get.
The importance of football to society is evident, and despite problems still arising, we've seen a clear progression in the women's game. More women now see a positive future for themselves than before. But what more needs to be done to continue this growth?
I feel like people will always see women's sports slightly different to men's, even when you see things like the women winning the Euros and there's the newspaper clippings of her taking her top off and celebrating, and how much attention that got, but the wrong attention.
If more was done to encourage girls to keep playing sports, it would have a massive impact. When I look back now, I do regret stopping playing football, especially more so now that there's so much exposure to it. Around the time I stopped playing, to me personally, it didn't feel like an important part of my life to keep pursuing. Whereas now, attitudes are changing to girls playing sport, and it's being seen that it is an important part of your life. It's an exciting part of your life. Now that there's more exposure to it and it's actually out there for people to see, it's going to inspire so many people to keep playing, to start playing.
Social change doesn't happen overnight. We see kind of a push and then a slight pushback in the other direction, and then more of a push and then a slight pushback in another direction. I think overall what needs to happen is like the usualization and normalization of women and girls playing football. Not just your kind of your Lauren Hemps and your Lauren Jameses and stuff, and Ebony Salmons and Alessia Russos of the world, but also older women playing football. You know, if you go to a power league or a goal or something, a five-a-side setup, you'll see men and boys of all ages from 5 to 65 playing football. And I think if they saw women and girls of those ages also playing football, and it's happening more now, but playing football on the pitch next to them, then over time and that kind of exposure, it's going to become less, because it's like they'll see a really good piece of play and they'll be used to kind of sharing the facilities with women and girls. And I just think we have to sit it out, you know, like this is a long road, so we need to be patient and kind of like maybe pick our battles a little bit. Within women's football, my experience is that people can be very like, oh my god, there are so few places at the top and I need to get there. Do you see how much space men's football takes up? We can take up that much space as well. So like help up the person who's coming up with you. That's a really important attitude to have when we're also trying to grow the game at the bottom. And be patient. There is enough room for all of us because there's enough room for the men.